Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. We have an exciting topic, which is test optimization with Tricentis LiveCompare. We're going to be talking about how you can optimize your testing. What that means is how you can test the most business at-risk areas with the least test cases. There's a lot of other features involved, and we're going to get into that. We're going to be doing a live demonstration. I'll be introducing my guest for today, who is Donik Maladami. He's a CoreALM lifecycle architect for SAP, and he's going to be walking us through how you can get LiveCompare working for you, also how you can integrate it with SAP Charm, which many of you are probably using to drive your transport process, and how do you embed all of this into your existing change management process. We're going to cover all those questions today. Please note, we will send out a recording after today's webinar, so you will get a copy of this in your email that you can review any of this. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. You can put those directly into the chat. We may be able to chat back some answers, but we'll make sure that we'll save some time at the end of the presentation as well to cover off your questions. We like to get those, it makes it a little bit more interactive. Again, thanks for joining us today, and I'm just going to kick things off. First, I'll give you a quick introduction in case you're new to CoreALM, who we are, what we do. We've been in business for about 15 years at this stage, and the company was founded when our CEO and founder, Labinot Bertucci, left his position. At the time, he was working as the ALM practice lead for SAP. So, working primarily with SAP Solution Manager. Many of our team actually previously worked at SAP, so we have kind of that level of experience. At the time, he kind of looked around in the landscape to see who else was out there serving customers in this space, because it was an area that he was very focused on and passionate about, and didn't see any companies at the time that were really focused 100% on application lifecycle management processes specifically for SAP customers, and decided to found CoreALM to do just that. It was about 2018 when we realized that there was an opportunity to solve problems in a more holistic way for customers. They had similar needs. Many customers that have SAP, of course, they have other applications in their landscape that they need to look after. And for those other applications, they tend to use other tools, such as Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow. And so really we saw an opportunity to kind of bridge and make a continuous process between those applications and what was available at the time from SAP ALM tools, which was Solution Manager. Now we have Cloud ALM on the scene, and so we've been able to kind of build some products that really help you to get the most out of the tools that you're already using, but the benefits of the application lifecycle tools that come directly from SAP. We've served some of SAP's biggest customers. Many of these customers have very challenging and stringent requirements. It could be they're in regulated industries like pharma or Ministry of Defense, those types of things. In those cases, sometimes we have to build fairly unique solutions, but we always take the best knowledge and build it into our products to make available to those people that may have more standard use cases. So we have quite a flexible product at this point in time, or set of products at this time, to cover kind of all bases related to application lifecycle management. So if you don't hear us mention it, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and we can talk to you about those things. In terms of what we cover from an application lifecycle management perspective, we kind of cover the whole process from end to end. So whether you're doing a brand new implementation of S4, or whether you're just keeping the lights on and maintaining your existing ECC or S4 environment, we can help you across all aspects of that application lifecycle management process. So whether you're doing planning, which could be process management using Signavio or Cloud ALM or other tools where you keep track of your business processes or your requirements, even getting into where you're preparing for a build, where you're doing sprint planning, we can integrate with Jira, with Azure DevOps to keep a consistent process for your SAP, non-SAP projects. Whether you're in build, where you want to keep track of your actual work items, maintain your transport, whether you're in testing, where you want to optimize testing, automate testing, or even just keep track of testing from an orchestration perspective to make sure you have real-time feedback on your test results as you're going through that process. And today we're going to be talking about kind of more of the release management side of things, as well as testing. How do you make sure that you have a really high quality process for releasing those SAP changes into the environment, consistent with what else you are doing on the integration side for other non-SAP applications. And then once you're live, how do you keep track and monitor all of those things to make sure those applications are staying healthy? So we really cover the whole gamut. And generally the best way you can get the biggest bang for the buck is if you take advantage of application lifecycle management tools in a kind of holistic process, because the more they connect, the more they value that they can bring to the table and provide. So that gives you a quick overview on who we are. From a products perspective, what we identified was many of our customers were having challenges relating to using multiple applications to guide their application lifecycle management process. Like I said, Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow are very common tools. Signavio is another. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about Tricentis today. How do all those things fit together? Most of the time, when they're used in kind of a standalone mode, we see a lot of our customers kind of, we call it the pivot interface, where you type in one system, then you kind of pivot your chair and type in a different. It's not very efficient. It leads to duplication of effort. If the best case scenario, worst case is that it's actually not the correct information in most systems. There's no automation. You can't actually kind of have your process work in a kind of lights out DevOps style of working. And so, what we try to do is we bring connectors to actually plug those processes together, bi-directional information going back and forth. You can decide which of those tools is going to be the leading tool, but both tools get updated with the latest information in real time. So you have, a perfect view of exactly where you're at, regardless of which tool you're using, but you get the benefit of what's available inside of SAP ALM tools that may not be available on the other side. For instance, test automation, transport management, those types of capabilities, may not be available in those other tools like ServiceNow, Jira, Azure DevOps. So this is a way of completely automating your SAP process. So we have coverage for Cloud ALM. We have coverage for the on-prem solution manager. And we also have direct integrations for transport management today, which is really exciting. We're actually offering free trials of this for a limited time period. So if you're interested to know more about how you can manage your SAP transports directly from ServiceNow or Jira or Azure DevOps, please reach out and we can discuss that with you and get you started on a free trial. So this just gives you a quick view of the different coverage we have from on-prem solution manager, Cloud ALM, and direct transport management integration solutions. Let's switch now and talk a little bit about Tricentis. I'm excited to be able to introduce LiveCompare as a subject area, but before we get into that, let's just talk briefly about who is Tricentis. If you're not familiar, I'm sure you've heard the name before. Tricentis is a solution extension partner, which is the highest level of partnership that is offered from SAP. It's only offered on an invitation basis. And basically, SAP saw massive growth in this particular solution from their customers and decided to make that kind of extra investment to really get tight with Tricentis and promote it as kind of the primary testing tool. And SAP does use Tricentis tools internally to do their own internal validation as well. So really a leader in enterprise testing. It covers all of your SAP. It has also capabilities to test non-SAP functions, so you can really test from end to end. It's an enterprise grade, and it has modern technology, including AI-driven workflows and capabilities as well. In terms of LiveCompare specifically, the goal for LiveCompare is really twofold. You want to cover the most at-risk areas for the lowest effort. So what we typically see is that when before you use Tricentis, you often have a very large number of test scripts that you run on a regression set basis, and that takes a certain amount of time for your resources. Usually it's not easy to do. And then every time you make a change, you kind of have to run through that whole regression set because you don't know how long it's going to take, or you try kind of by guesswork to estimate what are the right test cases to run, and don't always necessarily get the right coverage. So sometimes your risk profile isn't fully covered. but your effort is high. So what we try to do is reverse that cycle and improve the coverage of risk to make sure you cover all of your risk for the lowest effort in terms of test execution. And so really that's what Tricentis does when we talk about optimization. It's just do the right testing based on the risks that are identified. And it does that by actually analyzing the changes that you're making in SAP. It'll look into your SAP system. It'll see what those changes are. It'll flag those, and then it'll recommend the tests that you can actually run that will cover those risk areas, and as well identify areas where you may not have test cases available yet to cover those risks. You know, obviously AI is a big thing right now, and it's a big part of how Tricentis operates. It's built into the product. You don't have to worry about it. It's not like you interact with it. It's just watching the whole time. But also, you know, Tricentis has a history of running these functions, and so, you know, with many different customers using the platform, they've been able to really map through what are the most at-risk areas. So the general, you know, achievement, you can expect like a 90% improvement in terms of your business risk coverage, which is very, very significant. And this is done, you know, by while reducing your test effort and minimizing your defects. So just want to talk quickly about what we would see as a typical change cycle. We look at the change management or the application lifecycle management process as being a very holistic end-to-end process. It really starts way back in the cycle, whether you're using Signavio or, you know, a CloudALM or some other tool to capture your requirements. Could be Jira, could be Azure DevOps, any of those things. But basically, it's important to capture your requirements right off the bat, because having that requirements management, even before you get into where you're making changes, the very first thing is before you start making those coding changes, you'll already have an idea of what test areas you may need to expand upon. So if you're adding new capabilities, you can say, okay, well, we need to augment our test suite. It's good to have a view to that up front. And so we do recommend making sure that you have your requirements. And then traceability is key. So there are tools that you can use to make sure that you have traceability from your requirements through to your test plans, and make sure that when you're running those test cases that you know that you're exercising those requirements. Then, of course, you can get into the analysis of your actual changes. So as you're making changes to your code or your data tables, you can use LiveCompare to automatically test for those changes. What are the at-risk areas? And it'll give you a nice report. We're going to actually take a look at that. And then, of course, you can optimize your test coverage. So from that data, it'll flag for you if you've got your test cases available to LiveCompare. It'll look through and it'll say, okay, these are the hits. A hit means that you actually have a matching test case for that particular risk area. It looks at that based on the transaction IDs that are covered. And it'll say, please run these test cases. That'll cover your risk. These ones are not at risk. It'll also tell you your gaps. So gap is where you may have an area that is impacted by the change and you don't have a corresponding test case. So those are the ones that, you know, will flag those risk areas for you. So you can develop test cases to cover that risk, to make sure that you've got, you know, all of that covered before you go live. We generally recommend making that information available to your developers even before, you know, you go through your change advisory board meetings or those types of things, so that you can either do manual testing against it. Generally, you know, manual testing is the first step, but you can also run automated test cases if you have those in your database. That can be done using Tricentis Tosca. And then ultimately, you're going to go through some kind of a change and release process. Usually there's multiple levels of approval. You probably have a change advisory board where you review all of those changes. And again, having traceability back to your requirements through your test cases will give you a very clear picture of, these are the areas that are impacted. These are the test cases that I ran. This maps all those requirements, and LiveCompare reporting will show you those at-risk areas. You know you've got them covered. Then you have a lot more confidence that you can actually approve those changes. And we have customers that have got to the point where they've learned to trust the reporting enough that once they see that those areas have been checked off as having been tested, that they can automatically release those changes to the environment. They don't feel like they need to do any further analysis to hold back those changes. So it just smooths out the process, which makes it quicker and easier for for those changes to be delivered quickly to your business teams and get the biggest value at the earliest possible time. So with all that said, enough talk. I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Danik Molademi. Danik, welcome to the webinar.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Can you just confirm that you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you, and I'm gonna make you a presenter so you can share your screen when you're ready, and yeah, feel free to take it away.
Okay, and please confirm if you can see the Tricentis screen.
I see it. Looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danik Molademi. I'm an ALM solution architect here at CoreALM, and work together with the team to deploy different solutions for our customers. What we're going to take a look at today is the Tricentis LiveCompare tool, and discuss a little bit of how it works, how it gathers the data, and then how it would fit in the bigger picture in terms of your change management process. So the LiveCompare tool is relatively easy to deploy compared to some other SAP related, or in the SAP realm, some of the other applications that we've encountered before. The LiveCompare is relatively easy to deploy and then to connect to the systems that are going to be analyzed. But it's essentially, it's going to be a tool that's going to look at changes that are being made, changes in transports, or whether it be an upgrade or a release, and it's going to take and compare those against the total objects that you have, and then the test cases, and kind of build a picture, an overall picture of what needs to be tested, because ultimately that's our goal, to not under test or over test, but precisely know exactly what we need to be testing. So as you can see, the interface is web-based interface, so that's very nice. So we don't have to deploy any clients on individual or end users' machines. And then in addition to that, there are a lot of workflows that are deployed or delivered by the Tricentis team. So in the scenario here, I'm going to just display the charm related workflow, which kind of goes through all the steps that are required to perform this analysis of this change. So this entire block that you see here, and the entire workflow that was built, this was delivered by Tricentis. There's just nothing that was manually built. So that's one of the nice features, that we can analyze different kinds of objects without having to really do a lot of work to define those. But let's assume that we have executed, and for this sake of time, if we run one now, it's going to take a few minutes. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at one of the existing reports that we have executed in the past, and just to give you an idea of what the dashboard will look like, and then how we can dig into the details, into further details. So upon executing an analysis, in this case, we have ran an analysis for a charm change document that has 2 transports, and we want to analyze and see what needs to be tested based on the changes that were made. So what we see here on the dashboard at the high level, we're going to see the analysis date that was executed, the analysis system, typically being the development system, because that's where the modified objects are. And then we're going to have the performance history, in this case is the production system, because what we do, or what the tool does, is it will connect to the landscape. For example, your development, QA, pre-production, production systems, and it's going to gather different data from different systems. For example, from development system, it's going to take a look and see all the objects that are being developed. And then the production is going to look at the objects the way that they are being used, the frequency, the user that uses them, and how they're being used. And in addition to that, not only is it looking at the high level or the first level of objects to say that, oh, this is an object that is impacted, but it also does a second and third level of analysis, which looks at references as well. So for example, if I'm modifying a core object that is referenced by 10 other different objects, those are also flagged, and the corresponding test cases would be flagged. because if we just do one level of checking, then there could be a possibility that we're breaking something else that we're not even aware of, that's not even in the picture here. So that's why it's important to look at from a different perspective. We're analyzing the development system, that's where the development objects are. The production, we're gathering all the statistical data using UPL or STO3, the execution data, and then we have a pipeline which essentially just describes the systems that are being analyzed in that particular stream. Then at the second level, we do get an overview of all the objects that are used in production. In this case, 552 standard SAP objects and 11 of those, and 11 custom objects that are overall in the system. And the change that we just analyzed, or the transports that we just analyzed, those actually impact one regular custom object and one most at risk, which is high risk because it has references with others, or other objects reference it. So definitely something's going to be broken if we ignore it. So that's first level how it's going to be broken down. Then we have the most at risk and test coverage. So we have two objects that are being changed and that are impacted, but on the right side we see 0, which indicates that we have two gaps essentially, which means that we do not have test cases for these particular objects. And this is a tool that's going to essentially flush out all the gaps that you have in your testing. And as you continue to build test cases in the Tricentis Tosca, for example, this number, the number of gaps should be essentially 0. In this case, we have 2. Then these are the objects that are changing. There are 70 objects that are changed in these transports, but like we said, 68 of them are not going to have really any impact because they're not being used yet. So this could be like a new release or new development for stuff that doesn't exist in production, but yet we don't lose visibility of those. So we're gonna capture those. And then we get a breakdown by application area and then by test coverage if we have. So you can see here there's some theories, some programs that are being changed. So this kind of gives us an overview of the areas that are being changed. In addition to that, if we're interested to dig into more information about each specific area, we have different reports that we can download. In this case, we have the function details report, we have the testing details report, and analysis of the input data. But the testing is going to be related more into the test coverage, the gaps, and then the function details report is which I'm going to display next. And that's what's going to do is give us a little bit more details about the breakdown of each of these objects. So the report, once downloaded, is going to be in Excel format, and then we'll be able to analyze each area. So as you can see, it's similar to what we had on the Tricentis LiveCompare screen, where we have the analysis date, the system, the pipeline. In this case, we have the change ID because this is a charm-related change. And so we have one change ID with 2 objects being impacted. Similar to what we saw before, we're going to see the breakdown of each area. And then we're going to see the top 5 application areas where what the change will impact, just to give us an idea of what's being changed. In this case, we analyze the solution manager system, which has a CRM component. Therefore, we see the CRM. And then LiveCompare, in this scenario, it's not integrated with Tosca, so we do not have any results in terms of the testing. However, if we did, this is where we would see the details about the test cases, the test cases that are available, that can be executed. And then with Tosca, which will be another webinar, with Tosca, you can do all sorts of things in terms of automation, and then in terms of test coverage, and then test optimization options that are available. But upon clicking on each of these areas, we're going to end up into the Home tab, which is going to give us a breakdown of different different components that are impacted. And then we see the row number 2 here, what's listed is none. This typically means, or this means that these are custom objects that were introduced. And what we see here is that we have several custom objects available in our system. However, most of them are not impacted, but we do have 2 that are most at risk that definitely need to be tested. And again, this is the test gap is also annotated here that shows us that we have 2 test cases that we should develop to cover this particular change. And if we want to see a little bit more detail, so we have 2 objects that were custom and we want to see exactly what was analyzed, what we can see here is that we have all of these programs, and the first 2 being the ones that were impacted. We can see that actually these are the programs, in this case, the program or the Fiori app that was impacted. And we can see that those are most at risk. And then the risk itself, we have the ability to rate, whether it's low, medium, or high. And then we can see the description of those objects and then the usage. And this is very important because we can see that, and one object, for example, the risk is medium because in the period that we analyzed, that was not used. However, the second object, the Fiori object, was used 10,769 times, which makes it a high impacting or high risk item because it's used widely across the system. In this case, we also get details such as users. In this case, 18 users have used this object, and this is also an important dimension in determining how impactful it is, because in some case you might have a report that's used a lot, but only by one particular process or one user. In this case, we can see that 18 different users use this particular object. Then we get, this is where we get into the impactful and impacted objects, when we talked about the scenario where, other areas or other objects reference it. So this is where we're going to get details. In this case, one of these objects is brand new, so there's no references. And then we get, if we use WebDimpro applications, this is where we would get the details. That gets further filtered down to where you can see the details about those. In this case, we didn't have any. And then we saw that we had 18 users on one of these screens. We saw that 18 users were impacted. And in this case, we're going to see the relationship of the object type, the object name, how many times each user used that particular object. So you're going to get that breakdown. And then if we were integrated with Tosca, we would get details as far as test hits or gaps. And in this case, it's just showing us a hit or a gap. And then we're going to get further details as far as what repository type, what is the repository name, where does the test case, the status of the test case, whether we have data or not. All those details are presented here. And last but not least, what I wanted to do is show one more detail, is how do we get to execute this? We can execute the changes directly for Tricentis and feed the transport numbers, and the analysis can happen. Or in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the charm change document. And then because in this scenario that we just described, it was triggered from charm. Now, if you recall, when we looked at different workflow, if you use other tools, there are templates for other change management tools, but in this case, we're looking at charm. And how can you trigger this is we have flexibility into, for example, time the execution of the analysis based on a status, to say that when we go from in development to be tested, we can trigger the analysis, and then the results will be displayed in the attachment section of the change document in charm. So those are attached every time the change is used, and you can see here, you can build it out, you can execute it as many times as you wish. because we understand that some customers may use transport of copies, so they're going to move between development and to be tested multiple times, and you will have the ability to rerun the report. So we can tie it to a status to trigger it upon status change, or we can create it as an action, and you can see here the action LiveCompare run impact analysis. So the end user, developer, or the tester can run the analysis at will, and then the results will be attached, and essentially they will be pointed out to the report that we just described here with all the details. Then essentially what I wanted to display as far as what is on the system and what it looks like, and the integration with CoreALM. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. It's not a complicated integration at all, and including the LiveCompare to Tosca. So all integration it's fairly easy, and Tricentis team has done a pretty good job in providing all the guides and what's necessary to perform this integration. So I wanted to see at this point, Steve, this is what I was planning to display. I wanted to see if there are any questions that have come from the team so far.
Yes, we do have some questions. So I will I'll launch into those. We've got questions coming in fairly fast and furious. So please do put your questions into the chat. We'd be happy to answer those where we can. So first question, can you clarify how this works against SAP RISE PCE? I assume that you're talking about Public Cloud Edition. And Donik, I don't know if you have anything specifically. I know that that Tricentis LiveCompare does work with SAP RISE Public Cloud Edition, but I don't know if you have any more technical details around how that works.
On the technical details, I can describe overall the deployment process. It's fairly straightforward. Essentially, it's just a Windows executable, so it's as simple as installing an app on your computer, easier than installing Office in this case. And then the integration with other systems, it's fairly straightforward. Essentially, it's just like creating an RFC and pointing to the system that is required. Now, what are the restrictions between the Tricentis LiveCompare, wherever that tool is running, to the system that we're connecting? That's something that we all have to deal with, whether it's firewalls, but essentially it does work with those solutions. It's just a matter of connectivity and establishing the connection to those that sometimes might be a little bit more difficult just from the logistics perspective. But deploying and tying it together, it's pretty straightforward task. I don't know that I would have anything specific to add with regards to your question specifically.
Okay, no problem. And actually, just a clarification, the caller meant Private Cloud Edition. So that's the typical case that we generally work with, whether you're on RISE or not. You would just basically need to connect. So you have to have, obviously this has to be installed within your network. You have to open up the RFC, but then once that's done, most of our customers are using Private Cloud Edition. Many of them are on RISE. So that's pretty typical, but it does work with Public Cloud Edition as well, from what I understand. So you have your options available to you there. Okay, great. Next is, what are the criteria to consider an object most at risk? I took a crack at this one. You can correct if I'm wrong, but I think for the most part, it's looking at a combination of the level of change in that particular area, as well as, like you talked about, that multi-level approach of, is the object directly impacted, or is it impacted based on a dependency? Is there anything else that you're aware of? I know they built this up over a long history of execution for SAP systems. Anything else to add?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, I wouldn't have anything to add, but yeah, it's a combination of those variables, whether it be the number of times it was used, number of users, number of references, and then our own rating, low, medium, high, that we would give. The combination of all those would yield the most at risk.
Okay, great. Next question: if the program has zero risk usage, why is it flagged as most at risk? Any comments there?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So let's say the program has zero usage, then why would it be flagged as most at risk? That might have been one of the examples in the report that you shared. I think it really is looking at risk for that particular business area, whether or not you're using it. Is that correct?
I'll have to check this particular scenario, why it was flagged as such, because as I was describing it, I thought the same thing. Okay. But remember that this is, it's giving us usage in production. So yes. It has not made it to production yet, therefore there is no usage in prod, but there's other criteria that make it high risk because the change might be, so what we don't see here is other changes that are in flight that might rely on that object. There are references that might be in development that the development is not yet completed, has not moved to QA. So it's considering those because remember, it's analyzing dev and production. But usage comes from production.
And I think you can, when you run the report, you can specify which changes specifically you want to analyze, and it'll look at that set of changes. But good point. And if you're introducing a new function, obviously, that isn't like if it's a brand new capability, you're not going to have usage statistics. So they give you that most at risk calculation, regardless of whether or not you have usage statistics against it. So when you're reading the report, you kind of have to look at both columns. But a lot of people find it really handy that they can look at the usage statistics. They can even contact those users and find out more about how they're using it to make sure they understand for those at-risk areas that reporting is useful. To look at it both ways. So, okay, I think we got through most of those questions. Some more coming in through other chats here. Let me just take a quick look. So question around, if I have test cases already in Tosca, how does that come into play? Any comments there?
Oh, so yeah, if you have test cases already in Tosca, once the two tools, the LiveCompare and Tosca, are integrated, the LiveCompare will have visibility into the Tosca repositories, an inventory of the test cases, and then if they share objects, those will be flagged. And then those essentially will be pulled from the repository and classified that this is going to be your test scope for this particular change.
Yep.
So that's using the direct integration.
Yeah, and it's a pretty simple process that you go through basically just to connect the two tools. There's a URL that makes one of them public. You basically just have to link them up, make sure they have network ability to talk to each other. And then the repository information is shared, and that's where you start to see those test cases kind of flow. Okay, another question kind of related around Tricentis test cases. If you're configuring a new plant, does Tricentis have a built-in template of test cases to validate that new company or plant? I don't believe so. So I don't know of any pre-built content that exists within Tricentis. However, there are many best practice test cases available for you as part of the SAP best practices repository. Those can be made available to you in many different ways, but CoreALM is an easy way to get access to the best practices, test cases, and you can, have. Generally, if you have access to SAP, you have free license for CoreALM. If you're not using it, there's other ways to get access to those best practices. But those test cases you can download into CoreALM. You can create those. You could set them up in CoreALM, in Qtest, or in other business process repositories, or you can start doing automation inside of Tosca for those tests, and then you would be able to validate. But I don't think there's any pre-built automation content that I'm aware of. We do have tests that we have built for those purposes, and we could help you get started with that as well. Okay, Next question is around charm. We use manual. We don't use charm. We use manual transport management. And how's the impact and the risk areas in those cases identified? Dominic, I think you can run. Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, whether we use charm or not, it does not really matter. Typically, we have to put in, or we have, as we run the report, we have to put in the transport numbers that we want to analyze, or the changes that we want to analyze. We could either copy and paste the transports that we have on our list, or in this case, if we use a charm change document, those transports will be provided automatically by the change document. So that's really the advantage of using charm, and then the results will be attached to the charm document. But the risk, it's calculated the same way as if whether you were using charm or not.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it just looks at the transports that you provide. You can either give it charm change documents or you can give it transports. So charm is not required. Although if you have charm, as you saw in the demonstration, you can directly attach the LiveCompare reporting to the charm document, which makes it easier to go through your reviews of this information, makes it pretty seamless. That takes a little bit of configuration work, but it's not very hard to do. And that's kind of very helpful. And of course, there's other ways that you could bring that information into your process as well. If you're using ServiceNow or those types of things, we'd like to talk to you about that. Next question is, do we need to license Tosca Connect to integrate Tosca with LiveCompare? I'm not sure about that question. Definitely you need a license for Tosca and for LiveCompare to connect them. I'm not sure about Tosca Connect. I think that's more for external applications, but I'd have to look into that. Yeah, I can follow up with the person that asked that question afterwards. But I think as long as you have licenses for those two applications, you should be able to connect them. Just checking to see. Next question, any experiences in allowing ChatGPT in creating test cases? So I've definitely had some experience using AI, conversational AI tools. Remember that ChatGPT is a conversational AI tool. You can give it information about your history, but it doesn't automatically have access to any of your information. And it's only accessible through a kind of a chat-based interface. So definitely it can be very helpful in identifying test scenarios. And if you're good about prompting it by giving a lot of information associated with your business processes, we often take like a business process hierarchy, such as your BPML. You can feed that to ChatGPT or to other, AI conversational chat interfaces. And then you can ask it to give you a list of test scenarios that will cover those. We've even used it to help to identify, actually test cases specifically that, within our repository that could be used. But it takes a bit of work to do that because usually the prompts are limited in sort of length. But if you're interested in discussing that further, we could certainly talk more about how to use ChatGPT. Definitely this is an area of growth for a lot of companies, and it's a fairly non-threatening use of AI because you are always checking the results manually, which you generally don't want to turn over control to the machines quite yet. I think that kind of brings us to a close on questions. Any other comments, Dominic, that you want to mention?
Yeah, maybe talk about the impact on existing change management process. Seems like a lot of customers like to understand that by introducing this tool, how much do we have to change. So I mentioned in the beginning that deployment is very straightforward. As far as getting the tool, most of the time is going to be spent in integrating this process into your change management process. So depending on which tool you use for the change management process, the impact should be minimal because it would just be a stop in between a couple of statuses to say, okay, now we just need to execute this extra testing. But typically, the feedback that we get once we get through this is that benefit that it provides, it outweighs any of the difficulties during the change management process. So I mean, even though the impact is minimal, but the benefit that you get, it's much greater because now the visibility that you have. So that's the only thing I would add is we see something that a lot of customers are maybe hesitant for those reasons, but yeah, other than that.
Yeah, good point. It doesn't take very long to get the tools integrated and up and running. Like you said, there's the people change management side of it that sometimes takes a little bit more time. We definitely have good experience with that, and we can help you to sort of navigate that change, and are able to sort of guide people through what's the kind of the best way of keeping that change process the way you want it, but just adding these additional controls in place. That's pretty effective, and generally we would like to see that, you know, it starts to become part of the general culture where, you know, and there's other steps I guess you might want to talk about, you know, where in the change management process the LiveCompare usually gets inserted. But we want to kind of make sure that we have a continuous workflow that kind of goes through step by step through that process, and everybody knows what to do, so that by the time you get to your CAB meeting, you will have that available to all the reporting is there, everybody's done all of the right testing, and you're ready to go. You can release with confidence. Any other comments on that in terms of where this gets inserted or how to get those developers involved there, Donick?
Yeah, so usually a good point is when the development is done and then testing is about to begin. So when it's ready for testing or to be tested, or depending on what status you have. So this essentially narrows down the focus on only what needs to be tested, essentially what's being impacted, rather than what I think needs to be tested. So yeah,
good point. Go ahead.
I wanted to add a couple more things when you asked me earlier, because I realized that the focus of the conversation today was more around individual changes or, you know, charm or no charm. But what I also wanted to mention or zoom out a little bit and describe the other features that LiveCompare has. So the results are going to be the same in terms of impact, but essentially what can we analyze? So we can analyze individual transports, we can analyze a change document or the transport in a change document, but we can also perform analysis for system upgrades. So before we upgrade a system, so we can kind of see, I mean, a lot of times we assume that everything needs to be tested, but this can also be used in such scenarios to kind of narrow down what needs to be tested. Then also we have the release assurance, where it's bigger than a few transports, but not as big as a full upgrade. And then last but not least is the system compare capability, which in some scenarios, all the checks, we've done everything, but just things don't work the same in QA as they do in dev or production or pre-production. So then there's the capability of system compare, or we can compare certain configuration between systems to make sure that at least the systems are on the same level, components and specific configuration matches. And that'll help us identify any missing transports and such. So just wanted to mention these, but I realized I failed to mention them earlier.
No, good point. I mean, those are all good reports. There's quite a lot to the LiveCompare reporting tools. It's not a one and done, but certainly the change impact analysis, one of the more popular pieces of it, and is probably the piece that you use kind of most regularly. This, and I'd say release assurance, we see customers using that. If you have a weekly release cycle, they'll run this report every single time for every change document, and then for every release cycle, they'll run those two reports. And then system compare can be used as needed as well, as you mentioned. And it's a very rich reporting capability that definitely improves the quality of your releases. You can release with a lot more confidence, and we even have people that just automate that process, that as soon as they reach a certain status, whether it's in charm or whatever is driving your change process, as long as all those checks and balances are in play, they feel with when it reaches that status, they can just automatically import those changes to production and not sweat about it. So that's been going well for most of our customers. All right. I want to thank you, Donick, for sharing all that information, for walking us through the demo for today. Thanks very much for joining us. And I want to thank the rest of you. Thanks for joining us today. Please do reach out if you have any further questions that you'd like to discuss in more detail with us. You can scan the barcode on the screen right now with your phone. That'll take you to our resources page where you can find out about more exciting webinar topics. We do have a webinar scheduled in a couple weeks on the LiveCompare, on the Tricentis platform. As part of our partnership program, we're doing a webinar with Tricentis. You can sign up for that right on our website. And stay tuned, because we have a lot of exciting topics that we will be sharing, talking about some of our products and innovations. If you want to get in touch with us about LiveCompare, about Tosca, about anything that we've discussed here today, ChatGPT, sure. The easiest way is go to our website. It's CoreALM.com. And if you click the button in the top right corner of your screen, it'll say talk to an expert. You can just fill out that form and we get those, and we'll respond quickly, and we can get onto a call with you. We'd be happy to discuss any further details or questions that you might have. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon. Thank you again, Donick, and have a great rest of your day.